All right, welcome back to another episode of the International Career Club podcast. Today I'm here with Miss Patel. She is an experienced member of the oil and gas industry previously and is now a founder and CEO of her new startup, Xrathus. Is there anything you'd like to touch on just to build on who you are overall?
I'm Rekha Patel, and I'm a geologist. And as Kamal said, I am a founder of a tech company now called Xrathus.
And you mentioned that your education is in geology, and from what I gather, your startup and your future aspirations don't have much to do with geology. How did geology play a role in your professional career? How did it catapult you from education to industry?
I got a degree in mining geology. I was born and raised in East Africa, and I got my education in India. So when I graduated with my degree in India with a mining geology, I moved to the U.S. and moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that was the oil capital of the world at the time. So all the jobs that were available were in the oil and gas. So I decided to take some courses at the University of Tulsa in sedimentary geology to learn on how to explore for oil and gas, and then that's the career path I selected. So I started with some consultants in Tulsa, and then I left the consultancy and started my own consultancy practice. So I practiced as an independent geologist for many years. And there I was doing exploration mostly in Oklahoma, south central Kansas, and a little bit in the western part of Oklahoma.
All right, and you, as many of the people we interview, they get their education in one place and they decide to come to the States or another country. Our whole project and our network is centered around people who work internationally, people who have international backgrounds. And a pattern we see a lot is that people like to come to the US because it is the space for opportunity. But on the contrary, it seems that more people who are business minded, such as yourself, come to the United States for opportunity, whereas more corporate headed people go into other directions, living more of an expat lifestyle. Was moving to the United States, did you have in your mind that this place has the most potential for you to be on your own? Or was it more, this is the best place for industry, this is the best place for me to...
So I'll reflect back because the decisions that made then weren't really solely mine. So my family was here, and so my parents wanted me to come here because all the siblings were here. So that was the reason for coming to the United States. Once here, I lost my dad that very year, so then I had to decide what I needed to do. So in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, my brother and I decided I needed to start looking for work because I already had a degree, and then maybe focus on a career later. I had, prior to moving here, applied to come here to do my master's degree, and I was accepted at University of Tulsa. But due to visa reasons, I didn't make it. So I made it afterwards, right?
Okay.
So the decision wasn't solely mine, but this is home because we had migrated from Africa to the U.S., right? So we were going to stay here, and so that decision was kind of just made. And then to stay here and gain the independence, yes, that's been very helpful. Because if I was in India or Africa where I was born, I can perceive life to be very different. So this move to the U.S. has given me a lot of opportunity independently and also career-wise, right? So that's been refreshing for us here, yes.
For sure. And from Tulsa, you then continued with an oil and gas and moved to Houston.
So in Tulsa, so I was in the oil and gas industry early on, right? As you know, I'm 40 years into my career. At the last downturn in my consultancy, independent geology practice, the price of oil fell down, and at that time all my colleagues were going into environmental, so I took a stab at going into the environmental industry, which was quite difficult for a woman. I thought it was difficult for a woman in oil and gas, but it was worse in the environmental industry. So I started focusing more on the business development side. So I started growing my skills at business development and managing companies, and but I wasn't happy. I was missing the upstream industry a lot. So I decided to make a move to Houston about 23 years ago. And when I came here, I had already decided I wasn't going to stay in exploration. I was looking to see what I would do, and I decided to get into software because I wanted to do something that was totally different and had a little bit more stickiness for the rest of my career and into retirement.
I mean, that's a switch that we don't see many oil and gas people make. Switching to something which is more future-proof. And you also touched on the shift from independent practice and going through different stages of your career, moving around. You do seem to have more of a love for your independence, for going at something yourself. When creating your business in software, Xrathus, what was the difficulties that you had to navigate? Because it is going from something that is a bit more solidified, something that has proved revenue, to something completely new.
So I'll take you back in time just a bit to bring us back to Xrathus. So when I came here, I went into software for a company out of the UK. And so I was their first hiree in Houston. We were building a software package for a brand new discipline called rock physics. And we built the rock physics software, and I was able to bring it into all the major oil and gas companies and deploy it around the globe in about 2.5, 3 years, right? So I was there with them for 7 years. They wanted me to get into operations, which I love problem solving, so I wanted to stay into the role I was. So then I moved on from there and went to work for Halliburton, because at that time, even when I went around and asked colleagues, they all felt that I was very good at bringing people together. So I used those traits of mine to go and help Halliburton build the iEnergy Partner Program. So in that program, what I was doing was I was filling gaps in the software portfolio and identifying customers to provide end-to-end workflows. And that position came to an end for us in 2019 when there was a layoff. And so at that time, though, I had a total passion for collaboration and innovation. And as you mentioned earlier, you kind of see that I moved around a lot. So, I'm ambitious enough wanting to do my own things. So I felt at that time that I tried collaborative stuff at several places. And the best thing to do in collaboration is to go do it yourself, so that you can buy the time required to get it going, because it's a difficult, the aspects in it are difficult. So you can't worry about your return very soon. You have to give it time to get there, right? So I felt I had to do it on my own. So then comes back to your question of the difficulties. So the difficulties really to get started were, I'm a big visionary, and I can build strategies very easily, but I'm not a developer, right? So the biggest challenge was to learn how to be able to talk to developers. How do you take your vision and communicate it effectively to them so that they are understanding what to build? And then the decision of what is the future going to be like? And luckily, from reading articles and taking some MIT courses prior to starting Xrathus, I had the knowledge of let's do let's buy versus build. So we bought a lot of technologies to integrate, and our focus was on multidisciplinary workflows.
Yeah. There's two things I want to touch on. Just going back quite a bit, your education had nothing to do with this, and I think that's so transcendent to so many people within industry, so many people who aren't maybe lawyers, doctors in finance. In the world of business, you pivot so many times, and because the world is so evolved, like it evolves so fast, especially in the last decade, you have to make choices which may not be the safest uh, choice, but in the long run, it works out, and it's worthwhile. I wanted to ask you. You started Xrathus back in 2019, and in our prior episode, we talked to Mr. Shah, who outlined how he also, when starting businesses, liked to attach himself to other brands because that's the best way to gain momentum. And you mentioned how instead of spending time developing products, you bought and attached yourself to that. Um, it's a strategy that has paid off and worked. You're still in the building phase, in the pre-seed rounds of your investments. But what was it like navigating the pandemic? You may have started your company in the worst possible time in the last 50 years, if we exclude 2008. But how did you navigate that?
So it actually worked in my favor.
Okay.
I had started at the tail end of 2019. In early part of 2020, I was building my vision. I had one junior person that I'd hired, and I had decided on a company out of California that was going to help build the product, right? So really the first few months were the communication, the learning, and how are we going to get started. And in June of 2020, we started building the product. And we had a accelerated timeline to come up with hackathon functionality in the product, because we needed to do a hackathon for an association in October. And we met that timeline, and we were able to release the product to them, and they were able to use it. So it was working in our favor in the sense that when it was March 13th, if I remember correctly, when we shut down, we started working from home, and when time came to go back, we talked about going back amongst ourselves, and we were producing easily enough of our work, even by staying at home, right? We could be online, we had Zoom, we had our own audiovisual capabilities. So we decided to work from home, and that worked out okay for us. So although it was the worst of times in a way, for Xrathus it worked because we were in a development phase, and all the activities we were doing at the time we started were mostly with industry associations. And industry associations pivoted with us, and they started doing online events, which we were able to help them with and participate in.
And you touched on how you how you guys work from home. I've had conversations with people amongst a spectrum of industries, and senior people believe that to be more productive, they should be in the office. Obviously, working from home worked for you. What do you think was so unique about Xrathus that you believe that working from home for now is the way forward? Is it maybe the smaller company size, or do you think it's just more productive or more cost effective?
So it's cost effective right now, because now we need to raise funding. I've been bootstrapped, and now we need to build a team and need to raise funding. And as soon as that happens, we will be looking for office space and coming back out, because now we're also ready to interact a lot more with potential customers. So we need to be out, right?
And you mentioned how you wanted to come back into the physical office space to interact with customers. How essential is customer relations in your industry. I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry where customer relations is very much information and product based, and in consultancy where there are many options and your choice is purely dependent on who you trust. Do you think Xrathus is more of a trust based relationship, or are you really pushing that product?
I think it's a combination. It's a combination because the problem we're solving, collaborative innovation for accelerating innovation, it's spoken about now, but it still needs a vast amount of articulation of why you need to do it, and people need to understand it and uptake it.
Mm-hmm.
Trust is going to be of the ultimate need there, right? However, if you look at once they get the product, then I think, once they get started, there is less of a need, and that is because we're building a self-help ecosystem, and in that self-help ecosystem, they are going to need to go ahead and build what they want to do in the way of their innovation systems the way they want it. So they would need us less. And then in the product, we have taken care of that, where we are going to be able to provide SysUp capabilities to our customers so they can go from open innovation to private innovation with a button click and manage everything on their own.
Great. And you are in, as I mentioned before, the pre-seed rounds of your investment. You've already raised a couple $10,000 or so dollars, more than that. What is essential in your mind to bring that to the next level? I know that you have certain target numbers which you want to reach, and you know where you need to spend that money. How has Xrathus evolved from its early days to now for investors to see the potential in putting down so much money?
So number one is we are validated. Our validation for open innovation has come from NASA as well as ExxonMobil. So that helps that the product is validated. The product is validated for hackathons and online activities by several associations. So that will help a lot. We're very close to getting an LOI for with Mighty MOCP, so it's Mighty Oaks Capital, where we are going to be looking at provisioning Xrathus to a bunch of schools, where the schools will be entrepreneurship program students will be learning how to build businesses as well as build hackathons and possibly get pitch for possible funding, and from there on Mighty Oaks Capital actually helps them also in getting into retail. So retail meaning any kind of sales, right? But they have relationships with several retail stores, so they can take the entrepreneurs to the retail stores as well. Yeah. So it's much more of a differentiator than most of the accelerators.
Yeah,
right?
And because it's so cross industry, it is so applicable to so many different spaces. It's hard for you to pinpoint in 10 years where you may be with the company. That was going to be my next question, but obviously you have touched on its variation in ability. So
yes, so the platform is cross vertical. That's the X and the Xrathus, right? It's cross vertical. But our beachhead is going to be energy, and in energy, I envision that we should be, close to about 120 to 250 ARR, right? MRR by next year.
Okay.
So we're looking at some solid relationships in the energy industry, where we will be looking at bringing in some projects that are ongoing.
And a lot of your work right now is outsourced, and you have partners more than employees. Do you see yourself hiring more people, bringing more people on, and where do you think that is within your timeline?
So immediate, within the timeline, as soon as I get funding in place, we will be hiring several positions. One is to raise awareness. We need marketing. We need a salesperson to, you know, be able to hit harder on oil and gas. Even though I have great relationships, we want to be doing that. And then I have a lot of advisors for particular reasons, and maybe those need to go into roles. So I'm also looking for a co-founder on the technical side, and that will be a big help for the development side of things.
For sure. And I just wanted to finish up by asking you, is there anything that you see changing within the industry you're working in? How long, like, what do you see the longevity of it being? Because as you mentioned, you made the pivot so that it's something that can stick with you for the rest of your career. So I think it goes without saying that it's a future-proof industry. But where do you see it evolving? Where do you see it changing? And do you see it changing?
Yeah. So I think I see it evolving in multiple aspects, and I won't speak to industry because it's cross vertical. Digital transformation projects need to be done across industries, so that's one of the first problems we solve. We've spoken about Xrathus being a remote, but you know, everybody now, companies also have remote work, right?
Yeah.
And they have hybrid requirements. The platform actually provisions these capabilities very easily and seamlessly. So we think that as soon as people start understanding their needs better, they want to make sure that they are fast failing their projects before putting a lot of money in it, they will come to Xrathus. So it's the challenge is to inform both sides, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's it's just by based on what you're saying and your expertise and what you need to do, it shows how multifaceted your role is in the company. As you go through marketing, you're a visionary, you created this idea through years of working with an industry, and then more now human resources, managing people. You mentioned before your love for interaction, collaboration, which you brought to light with the product as well as everything you've done. So I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time. I think it gives us an important role into the future of venture capital and the future of startups, because the future is now. We have seen an evolution take place. Startups are not being conducted the same way they were being conducted 10 years ago. So I'd like to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.